usually used for garnishing. You can see the difference between battenets, small fingers and juliennes. As you can see, juliennes are only 1/16th of an inch in breadth and height. Now let's see how to cut these extremely fine juliennes. Make sure you have the following tools: a colander, a peeler, a knife, a green chopping board, and a container. Chef Raj is going to show us how to julienne ginger. First, wash your vegetable thoroughly and peel if required. Now, cut the piece of ginger along its length. Remember, you want long juliennes. Then, hold all the cut pieces together like so. They should look like the pages of a closed book. This will make it easier for you to cut them into even finer slices. Cut as thinly as you can. Do not go thicker than 1/16th of an inch. Collect your julienne vegetable in a container. There you have it, the perfect julienne slices. So let's revise what we have learnt. We have learnt about 3 methods of producing thin cuts: grating, shredding, and the julienne cuts. Always remember that your cut vegetables must be roughly the same size. This will ensure that they all get cooked evenly. And last but certainly not the least, always keep your working area clean and tidy. Follow all the safety precautions and be careful. Friends, as you know, meat products are flesh parts obtained from animals. Hence, they need to be properly cooked so as to make them hygienic. Meat products are generally cut into small pieces so that they are easily cooked and safe to eat. The tools used to cut meat are of different types, depending on the cut that you want to make. Let's have a look. Chef's knife, fork, butcher knife, fish filleting knife, and not to forget the chopping board. This time we shall use the yellow chopping board. Now that we know what the different knives are, let's move on to the cutting. The first type of cut we'll learn is called the drumstick cut. The leg pieces of chicken are called as drumsticks. They are served in curries or are roasted, grilled, or cooked in tandoors. If you've had chicken leg pieces, you'll know what I'm talking about. First, you must skin the chicken. This is very important if you want to make an Indian dish. On the other hand, if the chicken is intended for a continental dish, the skin should not be removed. Now hold the thigh. Feel the joint. A joint is where the two bones meet. Can you see how it moves? Cut at the joint. This is a good place to cut because there are soft cartilages inside and no sharp edges are formed once the cut is made. This is very important to note because sharp edges pose as a threat as they can injure the mouth when eating. Finally, friends, we have a drumstick. Let us now learn about another kind of cut called the curry cut. This is a general cut where the chicken is cut into 8 to 12 pieces. These pieces are then used in curries and stews. Skin the fresh chicken. This is very important for Indian dishes. If preparing for a continental dish, there is no need to skin the chicken. You can directly proceed with the cuts. Hold the legs of the chicken in one hand and the breast side in the other hand. Now move both your hands a little upwards to snap the backbone. Now cut from the snapped joint. Place both the legs of the chicken on the chopping board. Then cut through the middle of the chicken in order to get two pieces. From each piece, separate out the drumstick, the thigh. Chicken is small, only 4 pieces will be made. Take the upper half of the chicken. Take the upper half of the chicken and cut it vertically to divide into 2 equal halves. Make 2 or 3 equal cuts in each half. If the chicken is small, 2 equal cuts will suffice. Now that the cuts are made, you must immediately get the chicken pieces out of the danger zone to avoid spoiling. Take them to the chef to make an awesome curry or store them in the freezer for further use. Awesome! Now that you know how to make the curry cuts, let's move on to another very important type of cut called mincing. Mincing means grinding the meat into very small or minute pieces. Minced meat is used to make burger patties, kebabs, chicken keema, and such dishes. Let us see how our friend chef minces his chicken. But before you can mince the chicken to make your delicious recipes, you must debone it. How do you do that? Let chef show you. As usual, skin the chicken. Now, you must debone the chicken so that no bones are left in it when you grind it in a mincer. First, you must cut off wings at the first joint. Next, make a cut in the skin between the leg and body to expose the joint. Then, with your free hand, twist the thigh until the joint comes free. Once that's done, cut the leg starting from the top of the thigh bone and move downward. After that, strip the meat from the leg bone and turn the carcass on its side. Next, insert your knife behind the wing joint and cut forward, separating the wing from the body. Keep carving diagonally until the breast is loosened from the bone. Once the chicken is deboned, put it in the mincer. You can also mince using a chopper. After it has been properly minced, collect the mince in a container. Do you remember how we cut vegetables into dices or cube shapes? We can likewise cut chicken into cubes too. Normally, chicken cubes are of 1 by 1 by 1 inch or 2 by 1 by 1 inch dimensions. Sounds complicated like math? Don't worry, we'll learn how to make these cubes together. Again, we will start by skinning the fresh chicken. Now you must debone the chicken. Do you remember how to do that? Great. Then we'll just take a quick look at how it's done again. Now that the chicken is properly deboned, cut the meat into 1-inch strips lengthwise. Now taking each strip, place it horizontally on the yellow chopping board meant for poultry. Cut each strip vertically after every inch from one end to the other. Now that the meat has been cut into cubes, collect it in a container. Send it for cooking or store it at -18 degrees Celsius. Chicken can be cut into slices too. You can use chicken slices in various food dishes and preparations. You just need to be imaginative. Let's see how we can get the perfect chicken slices. You will be using a deboned chicken to make these slices of meat. Slice this deboned chicken horizontally into 2 halves. To each of these sliced halves, make vertical cuts. Once you have the slices, collect them in a separate container and immediately remove them from the danger zone. You know why, right? Now, do you want to make dices of chicken meat? If yes, these same slices can be further processed to make chicken dices. For dicing chicken, place the bunch of slices horizontally on the chopping board as shown by Chef Raj. Make vertical cuts. At every interval of 1/6 of an inch, make a cut. Continue by doing so from one end to the other. Now you have nicely diced chicken. You can store this in the freezer or send for cooking immediately. So, dear friends, today we learned how to make different cuts of chicken for a variety of dishes. Let us go through them once again. We learned how to make drumsticks, curry cuts, mince, cubes, and slices and dices. We also saw what tools are used in the process. Let us list them one by one. Chef's knife, butcher knife, the yellow chopping board. When we think about seafood, we mostly think of fish. But there is so much more to it than that. The term seafood is applicable to any sort of marine life that humans generally consider as food. Let's see how many different kinds of seafood we can spot. This fisherwoman has a very nice collection of fish. Look at these beautiful pomfrets. My mouth is already watering. Squids, mussels, oysters. All these animals are seafood, but they are not fish. They are termed as mollusks. This is because they don't have any bones. Now look at these crabs here. See this hard shell? Instead of bones, crabs have this outer shell. All animals having such outer skeletons are called crustaceans. Crabs, lobsters, even prawns, all are crustaceans. So, fish, mollusks, and crustaceans are the main types of seafood. Easy enough, right? Okay, so now that we have purchased some nice fresh seafood, let's get cooking. Oh, but wait, we're not ready yet. Seafood needs to be cut into pieces before being served to guests. You can't just serve a whole fish. Think about the bones that the customers would have to pick out, the amount of cutting. Phew! So let's look at the tools you would require to make your fish perfectly presentable. This knife here is called a fish filleting knife. Its sharp, flexible blade is perfect for maneuvering around the fish and getting them completely clean. Do you remember the color of the chopping board used to cut vegetables? Yes, correct. Green. And that used to cut meat? Correct again. Yellow. And do you know that we strictly use blue-colored chopping boards to cut seafood? Last but certainly not the least is our trusty kitchen knife. This knife should be your best friend and constant companion. Always have one tucked in your apron, even when you have meetings with a chef. This versatile knife is very handy when it comes to chopping off the scales, fins, tails, and heads of your seafood.
And most importantly, the hand gloves.
Now we're ready to cook some fish. Now that we know the tools to be used, let us get down to cutting our fish. Let's learn about the various ways that we can do this. We have the fillet, the darnay or steak cut, and the finger cut. I know these names sound a little complicated, but I promise you that the cuts are very simple. Don't believe me? I bet you will by the end of this lesson. So now that we have purchased some nice fresh seafood, let's get cooking. Oh, but wait, we're not ready yet. Seafood needs to be cut into pieces before being served to guests. You can't just serve a whole fish. Think about the bones that the customers would have to pick out, the amount of cutting. Phew! So let's look at the tools you would require to make your fish perfectly presentable. This knife here is called a fish filleting knife. Its sharp, flexible blade is perfect for maneuvering around the fish and getting them completely clean. Do you remember the color of the chopping board used to cut vegetables? Yes, correct. Green. And that used to cut meat? Correct again. Yellow. And do you know that we strictly use blue-colored chopping boards to cut seafood? Last but certainly not the least is our trusty kitchen knife. This knife should be your best friend and constant companion. Always have one tucked in your apron, even when you have meetings with a chef. This versatile knife is very handy when it comes to chopping off the scales, fins, tails, and heads of your seafood.
And most importantly, the hand gloves.
Now we're ready to cook some fish. Now that we know the tools to be used, let us get down to cutting our fish. Let's learn about the various ways that we can do this. We have the fillet, the darnay or steak cut, and the finger cut. I know these names sound a little complicated, but I promise you that the cuts are very simple. Don't believe me? I bet you will by the end of this lesson. Let's learn about the fillet cut first. Cutting a fillet basically means getting a big chunk of fish without any bones. The skin can be removed or left on as per the requirements. I'm going to show you how to get a good fillet. We always start with a dressed fish. A dressed fish is one that has had its head, scales, fin, tails, and internal organs removed. Most times, the fish vendor will dress and clean the fish for you. So, let's get cutting. First, place your dressed fish in a colander and wash it under running water. Place the washed fish on the chopping board. Remember to use the blue one. Hold the knife like this, with its blade facing away from you. Begin cutting the fish in half like this. Start from the tail and move towards where the head used to be. Use the fish's backbone to guide your knife. There! Now we have a nice fillet of fish. If you want to remove the skin, place the fish fillet on the chopping board with the skin facing down. Insert the knife between the flesh and the skin. Holding the skin, cut it away. Remember to go from the tail to the head. There you have it. A perfect fillet of fish. Now we're going to learn how to cut a darnay or steak cut. Wash your fish and place it on a blue chopping board. When cutting off the fish's head, angle your knife towards the front of the fish. We do this because there is a lot of good flesh under the skull, and this ensures that it doesn't get wasted. Cut down to the bone and follow the line through to just behind the fins on the gut cavity. Now just cut the fish vertically, directly on the bone. The size of your pieces may vary according to the size of your fish. However, keep them in the range of 1 to 1.5 inches. And that's all there is to the darnay cut. Fingers are just long, boneless pieces of fish that resemble your fingers. Let me show you how to cut fish into fingers. For this cut, you need to start off with a fish fillet. I already taught you how to cut a fillet. Do you remember? Good. Now, cut the fillet into strips that are about half an inch thick. Remember, These finger cuts have to be approximately as long as your fingers. That's 2 to 3 inches long. So if you're cutting a fish that's shorter than 2 inches, like mackerel, you would need to cut the strips horizontally. We now have perfectly cut fish fingers ready to cook or store. Oh, and speaking of storage, fish fingers need to be refrigerated at under 18 degrees Celsius. Uncooked fish fingers are quite fragile. So don't press the flesh too hard. Okay.
अरे गीता, तुम मेरे घर आई ये तो बहुत अच्छी बात है। वास्तव में मुझे इंटरनेट के बारे में कई महत्वपूर्ण बातों को समझने में तुम्हारी मदद की जरूरत है।
जरूर चाचा, मैं यहाँ आपकी मदद और मार्गदर्शन के लिए आई हूँ।
देखो गीता, जब